Hey, welcome in APUSH Nation to yet again another Fireside Chat edition. Tonight's theme is going to be on four events that relate to the American Revolution as we build up towards the war next week. And these four events are all four that you may have not heard of or may not have much familiarity with. So this is sort of me trying to enlighten you guys a bit on a few key events that really play a transformative role in leading the colonists to declare war on the mother country of England. And we're going to actually start going back to the colonial period with an event in 1733 and connect that to all the things we've been talking about recently in class. And it's actually a really pivotal trial, a lawsuit that comes up in 1733 in the colony of New York. A newspaper publisher named John Peter Zenger, who was a German immigrant, published a newspaper in New York. And in the paper, Zenger was publishing some negative literature about the governor of New York, Governor Gaspee. And eventually Gaspee, being the governor, sued John Peter Zenger, and Zenger was put on trial. And the trial gained a lot of attention in 1733. Being sort of a cause célèbre, meaning that it was an event that people really were taking notice of. Speaking of who was taking notice, Andrew Hamilton was a prominent Philadelphia lawyer, and he wound up representing Zenger in this trial. Now, really, the trial came down to the big issue was libel, which is, of course, even in modern times, something that you can be sued for if you print false statements about someone else and their character. You can be sued for libel. So Zenger was on trial for libel, and this really was a classic, newspaper case. And really, what it's going to challenge here is how far freedom of the press can extend in the colonies. And keep in mind, this is 1733. So Zenger's on trial for libel, and what Hamilton ultimately argues in Zenger's defense are two premises. The first is he argues that something's not libel if it's true. And so what Hamilton wound up doing in the trial was proving beyond a reasonable doubt that the governor Gaspee was in fact doing these negative accusations that Zenger had written about. So Hamilton convinces the jury that it's not libel if it's true. And here's a quote from Hamilton that really speaks volumes about the long-term effect of freedom of the press in the colonies as it relates to the American Revolution and even today in modern times. This is a quote, part of his defense. The press has, quote, a liberty both of exposing and opposing tyrannical power by speaking and writing truth. So the Zenger trial's ultimate effect, its long-term consequence on the colonies and the American Revolution, is that it really instills the value of freedom of the press. And as we get into the resistance movement of the 1760s and 1770s, freedom of the press is an ideal that is central to the resistance. The committees of correspondence, where various colonial assemblies were publishing and distributing pamphlets all throughout the colonies, speaking about resistance movements and trying to galvanize people against the British. Newspapers like Ben Franklin's Philadelphia Gazette played a central role in alerting and speaking to colonists about movements of the British and using Benjamin Franklin's tactic of pseudonyms, writing negative opinions about the British. And then, of course, clearly, as we crescendo here into today's Fireside Chat, this is going to come back in terms of the sort of fiery speeches that people were giving all throughout the colonies in response to the British grievances. So regardless, freedom of the press is established in the colonies, and that will continue forward into the First Amendment even still, and it's obviously a maxim that journalists apply to today, and that all stems back to the Zenger trial. So it's a good piece of precedence. The second event I'm going to be talking about, I know the Boston Tea Party gets a lot of attention as far as colonial violent protests, and we'll obviously have covered that in class. But the one that we're not going to cover, and the one I want to bring to your attention, was called the Gaspee Affair. Gaspee, Gaspee as in French, for all you Frenchies out there. you know that with that extra E, you get the accent on there. The Gaspee Affair took place in 1772, so it's right in the thick of all this colonial protest we've been discussing. And the Gaspee Affair occurred when a group of Sons of Liberty members, the sort of colonial group that was arming itself and conducting mass protests, whether it be committees of correspondence or whether it be tarring and feathering tax collectors, or in this case, the Gaspee Affair was when a number of these Sons of Liberty members burned a British ship. And much in the same way the Boston Tea Party drew a lot of attention because it was a direct protest over the Tea Act, the Gaspee Affair drew a lot of attention because it was a blatant act of violence, burning a British trade ship. Ultimately, the men who were behind the Gaspee Affair were brought to trial, and they faced one of these vice admiralty courts. And surprisingly, they were not convicted for treason because of lack of evidence. I guess that's what happens when you burn a ship and do it in the middle of the night. So the Gaspee Affair was a violent form of protest in 1772 involving colonists burning a ship that drew a lot of attention. And eventually, the Sons of Liberty members, they got off. They were not thrown in jail. The third event, and I'm sure as in grade school somewhere, you guys have come across this is sort of like the Mayflower story with the Pilgrims in the sense that there's a lot of historical urban legend about this, and this is Paul Revere's Midnight Ride. You may have come across this in grade school, or maybe you're a big Longfellow fan and you've read Henry Wadsworth's Longfellow's poem, Paul Revere's Midnight Ride. Paul Revere has gone down in American lore as being this iconic, patriot for allegedly alerting colonists about the British's arrival in 1775. Now, I know we're launching ahead a few years towards the war, and legend has it that there was a signal that if the British were coming by land, it was one signal of a lamp in the window, and if they were coming by sea, it was two lamps. And this has gone down, one if by land, two if by sea. And Paul Revere rode all throughout towns in New England screaming, "The British are coming, the British are coming." Well, that's all hogwash. None of that actually really happened. In fact, Paul Revere rode silently as not to alert the British that were living amongst the colonists already. Now, the fact of the matter is, Paul Revere was a pivotal person in the colonial protest movement. We looked at one of his engravings of the Boston Massacre from 1770. But on top of that, Paul Revere was a son of liberty, and he was well entrenched in New England's protest circles. He frequented many bars and taverns and inns, and he was a silversmith, so he had great access to a lot of the key people in the Revolution. And Paul Revere was given a mission that to warn members of the Patriot movement in Charleston, Massachusetts, if in fact the British were arriving and moving troops towards the city of Charleston. Well, Paul Revere rode, but he rode in the middle of the night, and he rode silently. He wasn't shouting as to alert the British were coming, because he would have actually alerted the British who were already there. But the point of the story is, Paul Revere seems to have gone down as the only person who took on this midnight ride in April of 1775. But in fact, there were four other riders. William Dawes was another rider, Samuel Prescott, and Israel Bissell. Three other guys all rode around the same time as Paul Revere to alert other colonials, patriots, that the British were in fact moving troops and about to launch an attack in the next couple of weeks. So, by the time Revere wound up getting to Lexington, Massachusetts, and he met up with Samuel Adams and John Hancock, Revere's ride proved pivotal. The Patriots were able to stage themselves and prepare for a battle that broke out with one of the first battles of the Revolution. But it's interesting that Paul Revere has gone down, and we forget about people like Dawes, Prescott, and Bissell, and a lot of that has to do with just literature. Longfellow, who wrote the poem Paul Revere's Midnight Ride, he immortalized Revere forever. Another poem that comes about by a man named Clay Perry talks about Israel Basil's role and why he was not immortalized. In fact, Israel Basil rode over 345 miles on his journey to alert other patriots, much longer than Paul Revere. And here's a line from the Perry poem about Israel Basil. Listen, my children, to my epistle of the long, long ride of Israel Basil, who outrode Paul by miles in time, but didn't rate a poet's rhyme. So make of it what you will. The fact of the matter is, Israel Basil, Samuel Prescott, and William Dawes were also patriots who rode heroically to warn other patriots that the British were coming. Paul Revere just seems to have gotten all the attention. And now for the last sort of story that you probably may not be very well familiar with, I'm going to turn it over to one of our guest speakers, and they're going to talk about Patrick Henry and his famous speech that galvanized many colonists in a way that no speech had ever before.
APUSHnation. This is Neil.
This is Misha.
And this is Cash.
And today we're going to talk to you a little bit about Patrick Henry.
Okay, Patrick Henry lived from 1736 to 1799. He was a member of Virginia's House of Burgesses and served as the first post-colonial governor of Virginia from 1776 to 1799. He was known for being a fiery speaker who evoked great emotion from listeners and also inspired American forefathers like Thomas Jefferson. This is an excerpt of Patrick Henry's speech, Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death.
No man thinks more highly than I do of the patriotism as well as abilities of the very worthy gentlemen who have just addressed the House.
But different men often see the same subject in different lights, and therefore I hope it will not be thought disrespectful to those gentlemen if, entertaining as I do opinions of a character very opposite to theirs, I shall speak forth my sentiments freely and without reserve.
This is no time for ceremony.
The question before the House is one of awful moment to this country.
For my own part, I consider it as nothing less than a question of freedom or slavery.
Sir, we have done everything that could be done to avert the storm which is now coming on. We have petitioned, we have remonstrated, we have supplicated, we have prostrated ourselves before the throne, and have implored its interposition to arrest the tyrannical heads of the ministry and parliament. Our petitions have been slighted. Our remonstrances have produced additional violence and insult. Our supplications have been disregarded, and we have been spurned with contempt from the foot of the throne. In vain, after these things may we indulge the fond hope of peace and reconciliation. There is no longer any room for hope. If we wish to be free, if we mean to preserve and violate those inestimable privileges for which we have been so long contending, if we mean not basely to abandon the noble struggle in which we have been so long engaged, in which we have pledged ourselves, never to abandon until the glorious object of our contest shall be obtained, we must fight! I repeat it, sir, we must fight!
They tell us, sir, that we are weak, unable to cope with so formidable an adversary. But when shall we be stronger? Will it be the next week or the next year? The millions of people armed in the holy cause of liberty, and in such a country as that which we possess, are invincible by any force which our enemy can send against us. Besides, sir, we shall not fight our battles alone. There is no retreat but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard on the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable. Let it come. I repeat it, sir. Let it come.
It is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war has actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What does that gentleman wish? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's discussion. I know it may have run a little longer than usual, but all four events, the Gaspee Affair, the Zenger Trial, Patrick Henry's speech, and of course, a little information on Paul Revere's ride. I hope it was informative and interesting, and of course, we had a great celebrity appearance tonight, so thank you for that. I'm really enjoying putting these good things together for you guys, and I know we got a test on Monday coming up here while I'll be away for the weekend, so good luck over the weekend as you guys prepare. I'll see you guys, and enjoy the rest of your evenings. Remember, the past shapes the future.